Good morning, Colorado. You are listening to the Daily Sun Up. It's a conversation with the Colorado Sun. I'm team editor David Krause. Before we jump into today's conversation, here is a quick message from our sponsor.
Support comes from Credit Union of Colorado, proud to call Colorado home for more than 90 years. They are a local institution with a track record of showing up for the community and putting people first. Credit Union of Colorado. Honestly good. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Set the summer trend. Electrify your lawn equipment and help reduce harmful ground-level ozone in your Front Range community. Learn more at simplestepsbetterair.org. Got leftover paint taking up space? Recycle it with Paint Care. Paint Care makes it simple and easy for households and businesses to recycle their leftover paint responsibly. Drop it off for free at one of more than 200 sites across Colorado. To learn more, visit paintcare.org.
Now, back to the show.
Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another reporter chat here on the Daily Sun Up podcast. I'm John Ingold. I'm the healthcare reporter at The Sun. Joining me, as always, is my excellent colleague, Michael Booth, who covers climate and environment. Hey, Mike, how's life?
Hey, John. Well, I think we're both broadcasting from air-conditioned comfort, so life is better than it would be otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a hot one along the Front Range here in Colorado this week. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. First of all, want to let you all know, if you haven't heard about it, about an excellent event that we're going to be putting on down in Colorado Springs on July 30th. This is an in-person event. It's going to be at Mountain Chalet, which is this really cool outdoor store in downtown Colorado Springs. It's been there forever, since my childhood days of growing up. I think I brought some hiking boots there once upon a time in elementary school or middle school. So it starts at 7 p.m. on July 30th, and it is about pack burro racing, kind of a fun sport that we have here in Colorado, moderated by our own Olivia Prinzel, who is both a reporter and a pack burro racer herself. And there will be a burro on site. Indy the burro will be at Mountain Chalet starting at 6 p.m. on July 30th. Come by, see Indy. I don't know if Indy's friendly. Maybe you can pet, maybe not. But go inside at 7. You can watch the event. You do need to RSVP for this event. Tickets are free, but you have to RSVP. Go to coloradosun.com/events, and that's how you can get signed up. So, Mike, let's talk about the heat. You've been doing some reporting on water usage and whether people are really cutting back in this both very hot but also very dry year that we're having.
In case you haven't noticed, folks, we are now on, I think, day 20 or 21 out of 21 or 22, depending on the day you're listening, of July, where the temperatures on the Front Range have been 90 degrees or higher. And that's a brutal record in terms of what happens to our lawn watering. So Denver, for example, Denver Water serves 1.5 million people, not just city of Denver, but also some major suburbs. They serve Lakewood, they serve Wheat Ridge, they serve most of Centennial, they serve some other suburbs. And they set a goal when they knew how bad the historically bad snowpack was, and looking ahead to a very hot summer, of a 20% savings from their 5-year average in summer water use, and asked everybody to get on board. As we talked about earlier on podcasts, not turn on your sprinklers until late May or early June, if at all possible, and a 2-day-a-week watering restriction based on the odd or even of your home address, and ask people to really work their hardest to comply so that we don't drain down the reservoirs and face an even worse water situation next summer if we don't get good snowpack. So how are we doing? Well, not great, Bob. In fact, we're doing terrible. We have only achieved about a 2% overall savings from the 5-year average instead of 20%. And that leaves tens of thousands of acre feet of water on the table. Unfortunately, doesn't leave it in the reservoirs. It drains the reservoirs out of that much. And Denver is kind of firing a warning shot to people that they need to do a lot better than that.
Okay, so Denver's not doing great, but there's another city that says it is doing better. So what are they doing that Denver's not doing?
We're hoping to find out more about that. We're going to have a conversation with Aurora Water later this week, and we will certainly put it at coloradosun.com once we get some answers from them. One thing they did say just in helping me set up the interview is they said, well, we're doing a lot of enforcement, and Denver's enforcement so far has consisted of basically you complaining about your neighbor, and at least 3,000 of us have been doing that and filing that complaint, and that has resulted in thousands of warning letters. Actually, not quite the warning letter yet. They're calling it an educational letter. The next step is an actual warning letter. And then if they then later in the summer confirm visually by a Denver Water employee or a city employee that there is a problem on the ground, has to be visually confirmed, then they can write a fine. And the fines start low and then get high pretty fast for people watering on days that they're not supposed to, watering from 10 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m. when they're not supposed to, when it's 102 degrees out and the water just evaporates. So they are saying they will get more enforcement, but Aurora is already doing that. And so we're going to find out more about why they think they've had more success. Aurora is in a very precarious situation. Their reservoir storage is much worse than Denver's. It just historically has been. Their sources of water are a little bit even less reliable than Denver in terms of snowpack. And they're only at about 55, 58, 60% of reservoir storage, whereas Denver's up at 78%, much lower than they should be, but better than Aurora. So everybody's kind of sitting on the edge here and needs their customers to do better.
Interesting. You also have been doing some reporting on a new study that came out from the Colorado School of Mines.
Yeah, I'll briefly mention that preview for people who might see that today or later this week at the coloradosun.com website. There is a kind of a underlining study supporting all this that we've been writing about in the near term from School of Mines experts showing that this current drought that we're in, the snowpack drought, has been made 14 times more likely by longer-term climate change. In the past, scientists have been very reluctant to link climate change to individual weather events or individual seasons, saying that the two things are separate and that we need to consider them separately. And now as things get hotter and climate change is starting to have a local impact in more places, they're saying, well, we don't need to draw those lines quite so carefully. We just need to start warning people that what you're going through right now is a direct result of climate change, and it's going to be happening more often as climate change gets worse unless you start cutting back on emissions. So we'll have more about that in our study coming up that we write about from School of Mines coming up at coloradosun.com. So keep your eye there. And John, when people go there, they will find more of your health and health policy reporting. One of the things you've been continuing to update people on is the ongoing saga between the families who are seeking transgender care for their kids and Children's Hospital, which has been really in a bind in a lot of ways. Why don't you tell us what is the latest on that?
Yeah, so this has really been an extraordinary, kind of heartbreaking story to report on. It has to do with families who have kids who are transgender and who are seeking gender-affirming care at Children's Hospital. And the caveat we always say that in this case, we're basically talking about prescriptions. We're talking about prescriptions for hormones. We're talking about prescriptions for puberty blockers. We're talking about like essentially medications that allow these kids to live as the gender they identify with. We're not talking about surgery because Children's does not and has never performed gender-affirming surgery on kids under the age of 18. Children's has continued to provide mental health care to kids who are transgender. So the thing here is that Children's stopped providing these prescriptions around the first of the year. The reason was because Children's was being threatened, among other hospitals nationwide, by the Trump administration, which was saying, if you provide this care, we think it's not a good medical care. We may kick you out of the Medicaid system. We may impose other sort of penalties. There's been a number of different efforts through a number of different avenues to target hospitals that are providing this care. And so Children's stopped it. These families sued Children's. It's four unnamed, sort of proceeding under pseudonyms in court, for patients and their families who sued Children's and said, hey, doing so violated the state anti-discrimination law. You basically are not providing us this care, not because it's not medically necessary for us, but because our kids are transgender. That's the reason that you've stopped providing this care to them is on the basis of their gender identity. The Colorado Supreme Court it was sort of a preliminary decision, but said, you've provided enough evidence that that's the case, that we think you're entitled to an injunction that forces children to resume this care. A district court judge entered that injunction, and Children's responded not by resuming the care, but by sort of updating what it calls its scope of services statement to basically say, okay, we offer this now. But now it's up to the doctors to actually write those prescriptions. The doctors have said they are not going to write the prescriptions because they themselves feel like they could be targeted by the federal government. The doctors are also not employed by Children's Hospital. They are employed by the University of Colorado School of Medicine, and they just sort of work at Children's Hospital. So the plaintiffs in this lawsuit, the families, have asked Children's to be held in contempt of court. And that's what's going on right now. The Children's is facing a contempt allegation in district court in Denver. The hospital pleaded not guilty to that allegation, and that kicks off essentially what is kind of like a trial process. It's in a civil court, right? It's in a civil case, but it bears some resemblance to a criminal proceeding.
There's just such a deficit of easy answers. Many health policy questions are complicated. This one just gets 10 times more complicated. You've got Children's and any other hospital in the modern era saying, we can't operate without Medicaid or Medicare funds for older patients. It's so much of our patient load, so we can't afford that threat from the federal government. And then they also say, we're not in control of every doctor. The doctors that we're talking about are not employed by us. And then you've got the families that say, look, we've got court orders, and why aren't you doing what the court is telling you to do? How long, do we know when there would be a trial and how long this might take to play out?
Yeah, so the trial is currently scheduled to start in early mid-September, September 10th. It's expecting to be at least 2 days, maybe 3. And again, it's going to look a little bit like a criminal procedure in that there will be witnesses who are testifying. Some witnesses may be subpoenaed to come and testify. There will be what's called discovery, which is like the exchange of information between the parties, so they all know they are sort of working from the same set of evidence. And at the end of it, there is no jury, so the judge will have to make a decision. And, I wish I could offer more insight into how that decision will be made, but I really don't know. Children's is arguing, like, we can't force doctors to do something that they're not comfortable doing, right? We can't override their professional judgment. And that makes sense, right? You wouldn't want a hospital sort of ordering a doctor to say, like, hey, you have to do this, or else you're fired, or else you're not allowed to work here. On the other hand, the plaintiffs are saying Children's can't get out of its responsibility to not discriminate by saying, like, well, we're not discriminating. It's these other people who work at our hospital who are discriminating, and we bear no responsibility for that. There's actually legal precedent that would say, like, you as an employer, or you as, sort of this entity that provides a place for someone to work, you can't absolve yourself of discrimination by saying it's not our fault, it's their fault. So it will be, from a legal standpoint, it'll be a very interesting argument. But, again, this is a case that's been going on for several months now. It's been over 7 months since Children's first suspended this care. And you have young patients who were receiving these prescriptions who, potentially, if they weren't able to find another source, they're not receiving them now. And that means that they're having physical changes that are inconsistent with their gender identity. And in some cases, these are going to be irreversible. So there's young people who, want a certain type of care, may not be able to get that kind of care right now, and are feeling like they're harmed, and their families are feeling like they're harmed. So it's, again, like I said, really, really, really heartbreaking. And this goes in parallel as the federal government, the efforts against the federal government to prevent the feds from being able to actually crack down on these hospitals is also going sort of at the national level.
I'm glad you have used the phrase heartbreaking. It's a good reminder to all of us to remember what's at the heart of all this. And you've got kids and families who are now facing months of delays because the trial process could go on for a long time, starting of a school year where their lives are unsettled, and they are these things that they thought might have been settled, and they've figured out a very emotional emotionally difficult part of their lives it will continue to be up in the air for quite some time, and that months in a kid's life is a long time. So try to remember that. John, you've been working on quickly and other things about the healthcare system changing in Colorado, just when we were getting used to the idea of what Common Spirit is and what Intermountain Health is. There are other changes going on in terms of hospital systems linking up. So what's the latest there?
Yeah, I'll be really quick. If you are in the healthcare industry or you sort of follow the news, it's a tumultuous time, a lot of turmoil in the hospital market, a lot of rising costs that are putting financial pressure on hospitals. They're seeing sort of lower what they would call reimbursement, right? They're not getting paid as much for their services. And then on top of that, you have these looming federal changes to both Medicaid eligibility, which could lead to more uninsured folks showing up at the hospital, and also insurance funding, which is leading to more uninsured folks showing up at the hospital. So you have these kind of these difficult circumstances, and it's not surprising then to see hospitals making some pretty big changes. And one that was announced just on Tuesday is that Advent Health will be partnering up with Intermountain Health in the Denver metro area. Advent Health from hospitals like Porter in Denver, Littleton Adventist. There's a hospital in Castle Rock. There's a hospital in Parker. Formerly, Advent had been teamed up with, you mentioned Common Spirit. They had been teamed up together to form Centura, if you remember Centura. Centura then broke apart a few years ago, and those two systems went their own way, and now this is Advent teaming up with another health system. Intermountain's had some rough times. They were in some difficult negotiations with Kaiser Permanente, and Kaiser Permanente ultimately ended up moving to a different health system, taking their huge number of patients with them. So Intermountain's facing some challenges. And so the terms of what's actually happening here are still a little bit unclear, but Intermountain and Advent Health will be creating a joint venture or intend to, and several of Intermountain's hospitals will now fall under Advent Health management, and those are Good Samaritan Hospital in Lafayette, Lutheran Hospital in Wheat Ridge, and Platte Valley Hospital in Brighton.
Wow. No shortage of stories and full employment for health policy reporters. So, John, thank you for all your reporting on those important topics. And we hope that all of you will continue to go to coloradosun.com for health and environment policy news and new hard breaking news in both those areas. And also don't forget what John mentioned about this great Packborough event on July 30th with Olivia Prensel, who will not only be interviewing some people who could talk to you about the whole history of burro racing and how that works, but Olivia's a great mountain adventurer herself. So at the very least, if you want to just go get some great hiking tips for the mountains, check in on that event. And we appreciate all your time and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks for listening. And finally, here are a few stories that you should know about today.
Several Colorado-based Olympians are trying to regroup after learning the International Olympic Committee is dropping Nordic combined skiing from the 2030 Winter Olympics. The competition combines ski jumping with cross-country skiing. It has appeared in every Winter Olympics since the inaugural Winter Games in 1924. The federal government wants Colorado to return $8 million in Medicaid funding after accusing the state of misspending money on an in-home care program for people with disabilities. The Office of Inspector General announced its finding Tuesday after reviewing Colorado's records on personal care services provided in the homes of Medicaid patients. Two giants of the Colorado healthcare market announced Tuesday that they are coupling up. Advent Health and Intermountain Health said they have signed a letter of intent to pursue a joint venture that would combine all 5 of Advent Health's Denver area hospitals with 3 of Intermountain's hospitals in the Denver metro area.
To read these stories and much more, visit our website, coloradosun.com. As an award-winning nonprofit news outlet, we take our mission of credible, independent journalism seriously, and you can check out our trust indicators at coloradosun.com/ethics. Our music is by the Denver-based Matt Skellinger Group. A link to their music is in our show notes, and a special thanks to Swallow Hill Music. I'm David Krause. See you next time.